Hello. My mic must be a lot louder now. Weird. But I think that is because of my texts. Just put that back up to 90. Headphones. Now it's super loud again. Softer then, and then DTS. Keep that traditional for now. And joy.
Visually, my environment and myself are interacting. So that's, again, unique to me. But hey there, Shopping Maniacs. You're listening to another analog episode of the Shop Talk Show. I'm Dave, and with me is Chris. Hey, take it away, Chris. Lazy John, man, that's great. I was going to try to sing over it. You know, I don't know the words of that song, but I was going to make some up. And it was going to be like, I went down to the river and drank a bottle of wine or something. You know, just just kind of like. But knowing latency and the effects of a online recording product, I was like, nope, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, can't be done. Although, gosh, was it you sent me? Somebody sent me a thing like during the pandemic that was like, we solved this basically, but it required having some hardware.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You had to get a box in your office, and there was literally geographic concerns, you know, like you had to be like, I could do it with somebody in Seattle here from Bend because it was close enough that they could kind of guarantee it, but across the world wasn't happening. But you know, so you could and if you sent it to everybody in your band, you know, they could be multiple people, do a whole band thing. It's cool that tech stepped in there and kind of made it happen. It makes me think of that like the email, the 500-mile email or whatever. I'm sure you've read that story.
I love that bug. Where somebody like at Berkeley or something or MIT was like, hey, I can send emails. It's all working unless I try to send it over 500 miles. And they were like, excuse me? That's not true.
But it turned out to be true because of some weird timeout or something. I can't remember the details. It's actually better to forget and then reread that story, so it's awesome next time. You know?
Yeah. That's probably true with most stories, huh? It's fun to forget the ending, so you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. Or like a big chunk of it. I don't know. Maybe that's why I watch Goonies every time. I don't know. I can quote it end to end, but I still like, oh yeah, that part's funny. So that's good. So
heck yeah. Well, just a normal week, just me and you.
Hanging out.
My Miranda calls it the Christopher and David Show.
Ooh, good. That's good.
That's how she refers to Shop Talk Show. Christopher and David Show has a little hip shuffle that goes with it.
My wife almost knows when we record this. No, we change it up a little bit here and there, so she's always confused. But she was like, the kids get out at like 1, so and I was like, no, I only podcast till 12, so
all good.
It's fine. You know, I'll take the kids. It's fine. So anyway,
all good. Yeah, it's summer. A lot of surprise child
camps. We go back to school. So anyway, it's really hot, but yeah, heading back to school and stuff. So like, pretty exciting over here in Austin, Texas. So
yeah,
when you're listening to this, my children will be in school. That has no bearing on your life, but that is a huge one on my life. Because now childcare is all and free. So
Heck yeah. Yeah, even if it's only 6 hours or however long kids go to school these days. It's okay. Yeah, we've been loading up the camps too, doing what we can.
you got to. Just gotta survive the summer. So
there's lots of software to talk about. God, I could talk about software forever. It's just on the mind. Not that it shouldn't always be,
you want
but
to talk about how Apple numbers is total trash? Because I could probably do a whole hour on this thing.
no. I unfortunately had a good experience the other day where I had
really?
Well, there's a website with a table on it, right? Like a table element, and I really wanted to add up the columns in one of the columns of the table, but the website didn't feature that. There's no like quick HTML way to do it. Maybe I could have written a clever query selector and done a little JavaScript math or something. And I'm like, why is this so hard? But I selected, just from the upper left, click and hold my mouse and just copy down to the bottom right of the table. And I was just like, I bet numbers will just know what I mean when I hit paste.
Oh, really?
You know what I mean? And it just totally did, and then and then it's 1 second to just select that row, one cell after the end of the last row, and then hit equals, and then drag your mouse up the column and be like, add all those things up. And it did it just fine. But that is a tiny little thing. I'm not trying to actually really truly use the software, which I don't know what your pain is, but
this is back to tech. We have a memory issue in Luro, like a cron job that runs in production only is timing out, like Eric's saying, like keep allocation used or whatever, and so it just crashes it. So it's like production only bug hooked up to a cron job, and yikes. So
the worst kind of
the worst, sure. Like the most hard to reproduce, like still don't quite have a repro locally and stuff like that, because like I'm not going to be able to max out my MacBook Pro, like probably can't, but whatever, like garbage Intel.
Files somehow, you think?
Yeah, like a file read, and I think it's just like reading a very giant file and falling over. So that's sort of what like we're having to deal with. But anyway, we've like gotten to the point like we're like debugging memory checkpoints to just make sure we have no leaks and stuff like that. So like we're logging out process dot memory usage, I think is what it is, or process in Node, and like tracking all these numbers. I have a table of like 1,600 rows for this one loop, right, or for this one pass, and and I dump it into numbers, right, and it's actually 5 values to get from process memory usage: the RSS, the heap total, the heap used, the 2 other ones. Anyway, I don't care about those other ones. They're just kind of like allocation things. So I'm looking at these values, and they're all in bytes. Like, so it's like 70 million bytes, and I'm just like, it'd be so cool if I could just read this in megabytes or kilobytes or whatever, something simpler than like a 12-digit number. And so but Apple Numbers doesn't let you format like that. I feel like any software would let me figure that out. Notion probably works, like bytes to kilobytes, or like I write a little formula or something. Anyway, it's just like I guess I could get more savvy with Apple or whatever and figure it out. But anyway, it was just frustrating. It's just like, I bet like other software does this just fine. So lets me write a custom formatter that's like megabytes. I couldn't find anything. There's no docs about Apple Numbers. The website is literally a page. So anything is in
there's
Apple
no customer support.
There's no customer support. There's no people making TikToks about how to get the most out of Apple Numbers. There's nothing. So anyway, that's my gripe. It could be. I think it does get an upgrade here in the next OS version, so we'll see. We'll see if it can redeem itself.
Isn't that funny that the bigger the software, the almost like guaranteed worse the service is? Like, you can't get somebody from Google on the phone. That's like not happening, right? Actually, remember when they sold their domains business? That's all still kind of happening. I think they sold to Squarespace and whatever. Did you see Matt Mullenweg was salty about it. He's like, I should have bid on that. Which I'm like, yeah, you should have. Well, then better. Although people would have had the same
Probably
opinion.
would have gone over better. Nah, I think it would have gone over better.
Better?
So,
yeah, maybe.
yeah.
But like, people were saying, well, part of the reason is because you kind of have to have customer support for a domain service. Like, that's so important. You can't just be like, yeah, good luck with your DNS. Hope that works out for you. You know, there needs to be customer support of some kind, which you'd think would be true for your, you know, business email or whatever too, but just somehow isn't. Like, I don't know, if you're having trouble with your entire company's email, too bad, I guess. You know, like they probably have some semblance of customer support, but I wouldn't assume that I could talk to somebody from Google. That's not gonna happen. Facebook too. I had a buddy whose Facebook account got hacked, and he's like, well, I'm me though, so there's some way, something. Can I send you my driver's license? Something to unactivate. And it's like, no, there's no process, there's no email, there's no phone number, there's absolutely no way. I'm sure if you went and sat a chair outside of their offices, they would just call the police on you or something. Like, you're not getting your account back. It's too bad.
That happened to my friend. His account got hacked. Started posting the bad porn, the worst one, and he just was like, this sucks, you know, and his account was shut down, deleted, basically. He can't get back to it. All his friends, all his like photos and stuff like that for years is just gone. Just gone. So
yeah, I don't know, it can be tricky, you know, if you wrote to us at CodePen, you know, on a free account, it's like, what do we have to verify you? Like, you could send me your driver's license, but there's nothing I can compare the details on your driver's license against to know that that was you who originally made that account. So it's hard. If you paid, you're in for it, Bob, and absolutely do it. We can check the credit card details. You know, there's a trail we have that leads directly to you, so you just never have that problem. Which means you should go pro on CodePen.
yeah, like, hey man, if you want to pay me money for Laura, I'll like personally do a SQL dump of all your stuff every night.
Right.
It's like, yeah, like you pay me money, I know who you are. Like we have an interaction, we have a paper trail. You know, like I could say like, well, give me the transaction from 22, you know, whatever. Yeah, like we could just cruise bank statements and try to verify you or something. But yeah, when it's just here, free anonymous, that's hard to really.
Yeah, tricky. You know, at some point, do you just make a judgment call? Like, if your photo is full of 10 years of photos, like of a person who matches the driver's license photo, at some point, you're like, yeah, all right, here, we'll let you back in. You know, or if it matches patterns of obvious spam. Like at one day, all of a sudden it started posting nutritional supplements. What do you think happened? You know?
Right. You just got big into getting yoked and swole. They had to get there.
It's gotta be hard to know, but I'm sure each one of those cases then is, you know, hours of work for someone or something, and they're like, well, that doesn't make money, so why would we do that?
Right. And they ask, irony here, Facebook makes money if somebody hacks your account, and then you have to go create a new one because new user signups goes up.
Yeah, true. Insidious though, because if that's a sad story, and the more of those that happen, the more people are like, you know what, forget that web app, which is the very worst thing that could happen.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's hard though because it's also like as the website owner or whatever, you have some responsibility, like you know, but like. It's not your fault if somebody's password is password 123. You know, like I can only help so much. You know, like
speaking of big software making changes,
let's go.
Lots of stuff though, actually. Like well, let me just instead of getting scope creep immediately, I'm gonna do the one. No, I'm gonna do Figma. Figma launched
yes
P3 colors in Figma, which is good because it's, you know, it's design software. It runs on the web. Websites support P3 color these days. Your monitor might not, but it probably does. Monitors, you know, it was like the way that it trickled through the ecosystem, I think, was kind of like video formats and photo formats kind of first, and then kind of the most incentive to capture the most color as they could, so they did. And then displays started catching up. Well, if we have that color information, why don't we show it on the screen. It actually probably sells monitors because they look great when they have more and richer colors and all that. It makes for good marketing. And then the technology is catching up last. For example, CSS and other web tech need to be able to specify a color that is in that P3 color space. So all that was starting to happen. Now it's software's turn, you know, like Photoshop already supports it. So it's a little weird how it supports it, but it's in there. Interesting. And now Figma is too, and they have all sorts of challenges for supporting it though, because there's this concept of color profiles. I think there's a good thread on it from the fellow who was on our show talking about OKC LCH, Audrey Sitnick, you know, was like, well, it's tricky because different people can open the file that have different needs and setups on their machine, and then color profiles was one of the ways it happened. I feel like it's this dialog box that if you've been around the web and design software for a long time, you've seen 1,000 times without even knowing it. When you used to open up a Photoshop document, there's a good chance it would tell you this document has a different color profile than the RGB color space of the current working space, blah blah. Would you like to, convert it to your color profile, honor their color profile, throw away color profile information? And nobody knew what it meant. I'm still a little unclear, and you're just like, I don't know, one of those sounds fine.
Yeah. Whichever one you think, buddy. Yeah, like you tell me.
Yeah, which one do you think? Yeah.
Well, it's the same with fonts, right? It's like, this one doesn't have fonts, so I replaced everything with Georgia. And you're like, well,
I do that's that one.
That's not okay, but like, what's tricky is like having a font on your computer or not on your computer is kind of obvious, right? Like it's like, oh, that's not the right font. Sometimes it's obvious, Attican's grotesque and like, I don't know, like Helvetica. I don't really know the difference, but I'm sure there is one. But the color profile is like, so like you don't know, like I could be plugged into an external monitor that does not have it, but my laptop does have it.
Right.
Who's right? Who's got? I don't know. I think it's the monitor, but
very tricky. But all that stuff has been handled by the technology and is ready to go. That a non-support situation where the software supports that color, but the monitor doesn't. That's a good one generally, because the software can sense that situation. It pulls the color back into a color space that can be shown. It's a nice fallback. Instead of just showing white or black or nothing or something, they know how to like shift the color back down into the color space. Pretty cool, really.
Yeah. I just wonder if it's like rough seas here, like because I choose the coolest pink, the hottest pink, laser pink, right? And then Jeff opens it on his computer. That's an old bad one. Just kidding. He's a RGB basic bitch, and so he opens it and like it's just, and then he's like, ooh, that pink just isn't cool. I'm gonna switch to lime green because that's popping on my computer, and
right.
I got on my computer, and then it's like,
exactly, the collaborative aspects of this are rough.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to summarize this perfectly, but one of the interesting things is that even a hex code we think of in CSS now as in RGB only, and that's true for CSS. You cannot say, I want this hex code to exist in the whatever LCH color space or in P3 color or whatever, one of the other color. So it's not exactly in my brain right now, but I'm sure you can imagine what I mean.
Rec 2020, P3, Rec 2020.
Right, but there's color models and there's color spaces. P3 is the space, and then you can model the color differently, and those tend to map to functions in CSS, right? Like lab is different than LCH, and there's other ones. But what does Figma do? They don't really have they don't put the OKLCH function in Figma. They just do the hex codes, Sometimes even the 8-digit ones, but that's just alpha. It doesn't matter that much. So they can display the P3 colors, but the hex code values go up into P3 space, which is a little unfortunate because then if you copy and paste that out, it's not going to work. in CSS.
Yeah,
you know?
right. That was my thing. Like, because the hex code is S or RGB, literally, right? And
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, but it is in CSS. You know?
it is in CSS, and so it does kind of like flatten the colors to some degree. I mean, you can get up into the space, I guess, in some things, like yellows maybe, but you can't, right? Like, it more or less flattens the P3 space. Man,
It does. It's a little weird. And here's another thing: is even the same hex code can mean different things depending on what your system supports, what your monitor supports. So Andrew is using like FF0000, which is red in a hex code. That's just straight up different. That exact hex code in P3 is like way more richly red.
Oh, so if I do like the whatever color from or whatever, it would look super different. Interesting.
Well, but it does solve the issue of like somebody else opening the same file in Figma. Like, it's not going to show you two different hex codes. It's the same hex code. You know, hopefully it stops them from changing it. They're like, that doesn't look as good. I'm going to move it around, and then they're moving it around within the confines of RGB, whereas you're like, don't do that.
Yeah. It's a brain melter, man. I mean, I've tried to communicate to my coworkers how cool it is, but I don't do a great job. So I think, we'll get there eventually, but it's hard when the tools aren't there yet either. So I'm glad it's now in Figma to some degree. So
the saving grace is Andrew was a little incentivized to get you to use OKLCH.com, which I don't know. They just think it's a cool tool, and it is a cool tool. It's not like a paid thing or anything. But the cool thing is you can take that, no matter what kind of computer you have, you can take that Figma hex code, paste it into OKLCH.com, and select Figma P3, and then it will like convert it to CSS. So you're not like totally screwed here or whatever.
Oh, really? Okay.
You just gotta know to do that. You'd think Figma would have a slightly better story than that, unless I just have it wrong, and then someone from Figma, please email me or whatever, I understand. But it does seem a little weird that you can it's like nice that Figma has P3 color in it, but like, as you know from the conference thing you were just at, they're pretty big on Figma to web design. Like, they want to help that flow, that it's like a little bit of a bummer that you might grab a hex code right out of it that doesn't work. That's not good.
Yeah. Oh, man, weird times, huh? Weird times.
So Tom writes that this all came from a question, believe it or not. It says, can you imagine a color space CSS property? It could be set on the root of the page or even in a meta tag. Yeah, he's excited about the color features coming to CSS, but can't help feel that there's a tricky disconnect between the design software and the web. Right. And he says you've mentioned copy and pasteability of hex, which is no small thing. I still feel strongly about that. I feel like design software don't make the more complex color formats easy to copy and paste, then people just won't do it. I find myself even just being like, just give me a hex code because of how easy they are to grab.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, but I think Tom has a good point. Wouldn't that be interesting if you could set the page to say this, I don't know, element, or probably the whole page is probably the way to do it, is in this other color space, then you could use hex codes that are outside of sRGB, and that would certainly help Figma's case. I don't know, that's beyond my pay grade, but
I picked the P3 orange, right? And it's the Figma P3 hex code is FB6222 FF, right?
Okay.
8-digit hex code FB6222. But then the fallback hex is FF6832. I guess I don't understand how it's punching up into this color space, but that's just my brain here. So, because if I type FB6222, I don't get the same color. I'm so confused. And then, hey, we'll figure it out one day. I don't get it. No. I don't get it, Chris. I don't get it. So, anyway.
hard world. Yeah, indeed. Maybe we should do another one here. But interesting. I know what it's like trying to design software for designers and developers. A little tricky. Stuff to catch up on there. We do have a fella, Chris Weiser, like Budweiser without the bud. Nice, buddy. We had a question for you specifically, just about productivity tools. Curious, you said you've had the run of the gamut of productivity tools: to-do apps, bullet journaling, sticky notes, Ugmonk's analog card system. You do and think about this stuff a lot, so he's just wondering if are you still on analog? Do you recommend it for other people? Talk productivity tools, Dave.
I think you could probably pick a productivity tool if you understand your own brain a lot better, I think that's what I've been understanding. Again, this is like undiagnosed ADHD, not from a doctor, it's from TikTok, so don't, take this, don't self-diagnose yourself off of this. But what I've noticed is there's this thing called optimal stimulation, and if I have too much stimulation, I become overwhelmed and I shut down. So, and it's this weird thing about ADHD. It's not so much an attention deficit, but it's an attention starvation, and so it's kind of like when you're full, when you've eaten too much, you're like, God, that sucks, I'm in a bad state. But when you're hungry, you're just like, I need more, So,
Ooh, okay.
So anyway, that's sort of.
So how does this work? Can you do, for example, just one thing at a time only?
No, I'm doing 10 things right now. So I got a code editor, I got a blog post, I got a podcast, I got
I get
database tool, and I got 10 things going right now.
So that's good to know about you too, that you have something to do today, and you're going to get it done, but not through exclusive focus on it. Because you could hear that as advice, right? You got to get something done. Focus, man, focus.
Focus,
and you're like,
dude,
actually need to focus on 3 things in order to get that one done. So sorry, but that's just how I have to roll.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like the trick I'm learning with ADHD, my undiagnosed ADHD that I self-medicate with caffeine, is like there's like moments of unfocus, like you're doing 10 things at once, and then there's moments of hyper-focus. That's where the superpower of ADHD comes in. Like you can almost get like, an 8-hour stretch where you forget to eat and you're just working on stuff, or, like hardcore and just hammering stuff out. So, like learning that rhythm and stuff is important. So, also to say, before we get into productivity systems, know thyself, I guess, right?
Right. It does seem a little cart before the horse or whatever to just be like, hey, you know what you need? You need
a bullet journal.
Yeah. Because how would you know? That's weird.
So, understanding what you do is, I think, or how you operate is the most thing. So, now I'll go through the thing. Bullet journal is very cool. It's I'll just describe it. It's basically like you do planning. You basically draw 5 columns for the week, or 7 if you want to do weekends in this thing. And then you say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, what do I have to do? You write down, draw little check boxes for what you have to do that day. And then you also have this on a month level, what do I have to do this month? And then you kind of boil all this stuff down at the end of every month. It's very cool. And then maybe you even have a day thing where you sit down and you do, okay, today, what do I have to do? I kind of forget all the aspects of it, but it's very cool. I found out though, if I don't do it, I fall off the horse very quickly. It's just, if I don't open that notebook that all that information's in, it's gone. I'd lost,
Yeah, you'd be starting over to get back on the train.
Yeah, my previous productivity system was sticky notes everywhere. I put sticky notes with GitHub issues or that I need to do today, or feed yourself or walk the dog, whatever. This is cool. This is very noisy, and that's where that optimal stimulation thing comes in. It is visual clutter that when I'm stressed, I actually don't react well. I shut down because of visual clutter. Even stuff in my house, whatever kids all over the house, it just drives me nuts because it's I'm stressed. This is clutter. visually, my environment and myself are interacting. So that's again unique to me. But the UGMonk analog system has been great. Here's a card right here. I'm showing it to Chris, but it's like I've got like I gotta do something for the TSA. I did that. Invoice or pay this guy Philip. I gotta invoice somebody. I gotta log into my Edward Jones or whatever to get some data. That stuff is and then I do my meetings that I have at the bottom. There's 10 rows on here, and I fill out this card every day, sort of like the ritual. And I really like this ritual because it's sort of like you take 5 minutes every day and you just say, what do I have to do today? What's the most important thing? What's coming? And that helps my brain too to like know what's inbound in the day. If I fill up a card with 10 things, that's a lot, right? Or I feel like if I do 10 things in a day, crap. Like that's a lot,
Especially if it isn't it? Because there's things that will never be a bullet.
Yeah.
But ended up being a thing. Like you got this letter in the mail, so your job is actually to open it, read it, figure out if it matters or not. Probably doesn't, and throw it in the trash. Like, it kind of counts. If somebody is. I used to know a guy who just, he had trouble getting a lot of stuff done in a day, and if he checked his mail and went through his mail, that was a good day for the guy. He had a,
Yeah, and you can always tell. I mean, it's like, where are your piles, like I have a pile of unfiled crap. That's the stuff I don't like to do, and now it's become a big burden, a backlog, So I probably need a little bullet point that's just like file 10 things or whatever, just to keep ahead, or whatever. Or open your mail, triage your mail, The UGMonk system's been great. I'm still using it for 2 years-ish now, so it's been awesome. Yeah. So
you're
a little pricey. There's like cheaper versions, but you can use code DaveTrump5000 at checkout. No.
Wow, this is a little. It's kind of like the simple human trash bags of productivity or something. Like to throw something in a garbage can, you don't need these premium trash bags. Just like you don't need a premium piece of paper to write what you're gonna do that day.
You don't, but it's also, I don't know. I file it under self-care, just like, it's like,
okay.
Look, if I gave Rupert, again, my brain, if I say that's too expensive, I should make my own. Now I have another project I have to execute. Now that's going around in my brain, that's hard, but I would consider it. I mean, you could probably just get some 3x5 note cards and do the same thing. Just draw 10 lines or make a little stamp that stamps out 10 lines or something. You can have the same effect, but I don't know. I'm happy to pay UGMonk for the cards. It's easy for me, so.
Yeah, I agree. And they probably are actually nice and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, it's like the perfect card stock.
Then it's not like 1 week it's on a piece of computer paper and 1 week it's on some like yellow graph paper or something. You might lose a little momentum.
I have that over here. and those sit at the corner minutes. That one's not good. So I started taking notes like that. But these cards are rad. So I would recommend it. Again, it's sort of that thing. It's like, if it's interesting to you, I would do it, and bite the bullet, And
what is it? Yeah, so yours is, it's like a limited number of really nameable tasks.
Yeah.
And that you have a very strong goal to accomplish all of them.
I try to clear the board every day. I mean, I don't do it every day, but I try to clear it. But it's about being like, whatever, mindful / tactical about your day. Like, what do I have to do today? Like, what do I absolutely have to do today? A, B, and C. Great, let's go. Let's get at it.
Would even an email be on that list? Be like, I really need to get back to Jimmy about the conference in Amsterdam next year or whatever. That's on there?
Yeah, like if I've been putting that off for too long, like I need to do that, And some days check email is on there because I have like whatever That's my other secret is I'm really bad at email. So
Yeah, you have to have a difference. You'd never put something that you need to get done. You'd never like just email it to yourself or something because you just don't look at it often enough to know.
no, that's not useful for me. I mean, I'll maybe mark as unread or whatever. Just like if it's like something I have to circle back to. So this all gets into GitHub issues too. Like there's not just one funnel of issues in my life. Like GitHub issues is another thing. One thing I've been trying to, I firmly believe like backlogs have an emotional weight. I don't know if you agree, Chris. I'd be curious, but like,
oh my God, do they ever? Like
they do.
The older the thing on the to-do list, the more I'm just like, and that's I guess that's a auditory version of guilt or weight or something.
For sure, no, it is. And so, what I've been kind of asking of my coworkers is like we keep the issue queue very tactical, like try to avoid hey, I had a cool idea, or maybe one day we can do this, like try to keep it very much like if you're going to pick up this ticket, exactly what's going to happen,
Right, I think that's important too. It reminds me of an old 37 Signals thing where they're like, if it's a good idea, you won't forget about it.
Yeah.
So like, don't clutter up your crap with it. And if it's not that good of an idea, then the fact that it fluttered away from your mind is probably good.
Yeah, for sure.
It didn't become a card, get artificially too much weight. Somebody actually picked it up and did it, even though it wasn't that good of an idea to begin with.
Yeah. So we're sitting at about 50 issues right now, and that's a lot for a small engineering team, I'd say. But then I made a technical debt tag or label in GitHub because I just was like, I just labeled the issues as debt. If we've said like, okay, this is an issue and we've decided not to do it right now, that's debt. That was kind of like the.
I like that it's kind of a literal definition of debt.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think of the things that you do as debt also. It's like, we're going to incorporate this new screenshotting technology or something. That's debt because you now have to maintain it forever, but I guess it's not as clear of a definition of like, we're going to let this old screenshot system rot. That's more like actual debt because it has to be paid later.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've said, like this screenshot system is super expensive and wildly out of date and doesn't do AVIF. Like you like identified those things, right?
Right.
And like you're like, cool, I'm not gonna do it. That's not right now, but we need to do that because it is costing us actual money in server bucks. It's just it's not a big deal, but it is just interesting, right? We'll file the issue like upgrade screenshot service, but it is like, but basically I think if we're not going to do it, if we made the decision not to do it now, we'll file it as debt. And so, we can go into our debt label and see 20 issues, but they're not all important and some are really minor, but
that's tricky.
It's just stuff we're not going to do now. Or
see, this is two different concepts of that. You're talking about a shared system between you and all your peeps, which is interesting too, because that's not, you can't point to one person's brain and say this, it just has to work for everybody's brain. Whereas your personal system, you can fine tune to your own brain.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like your personal system can be as chaotic or whatever as you want. But I think like in the public system, there needs to be just as much rigor as you can get. I don't know. We have a few like explore this idea issues, like spiky kind of issues, those are not my favorite, candidly, just because they kind of go on, but I think like if we could, the goal is pull all those up and say like, cool, what are we going to do about this, or what needs to be done. So that's been my like latest kick is like, here's these 5 things we've talked about, what do each of these need, like do like needs versus wants kind of, like what does it need, and so to be done. So
to be done, we've even enforced a principle of the card can't just say like screenshot system or something. Like that's too broad. It probably needs to get broken up a little bit, and it's not actionable. So every card name has to have like has to be a thing that you do. Just give me the name of something.
Right.
What would you call that? Like an action. It's just to say research, research replacements for screenshot system. That's almost good enough. I'd say that's a little tricky because the research doesn't have a outcome
always, right? Yeah.
So much, so it might be like document. It might be better because then it's the action item is that at the end of it, it's been documented.
Yeah, that's my thing. I could go full. I could go full weirdo, like authoritarian on the board. To be honest, I hate that about myself. But like, it's just like I'm very big on the verb X to Y, like add something to component or something like that, or action object to whatever, action noun to object or something like that. So. Right,
and unfortunately, some of the best working days I find is when there's a bunch of those and they are well documented and well understood and agreed upon by the team, and you can just knock them out.
Yeah.
That's just not all work though. There's all kinds of other work that's like, where the actual thing that you need to get done, whether it's a card or not, is like, get everyone on the same page and agreeing about the general way that this abstract concept works. Which will never be a card, but is what needs to be done. And then once you're at that like cool agreement, understanding state, which will never be perfect, but it'll be closer than it was, then you can make more fine-grained cards around it.
Right. Yeah. Oh man.
Impossible. Yeah.
No, it's hard, and but I think that's work, right? Like I think I've heard the term. I probably said it here, but like when you're building a company or working in a company, you're building a product. But I like the idea of you're building the machine that builds the machine, right? Or that builds the product. Like. And how you work together, how you operate, that is like just how you get things done, so that's this memory issue we were having, like, we were kind of just trying code, like, optimizations, but we're at the bottom of the, like, how to fix JavaScript list, it's literally the advice is use Rust or Go, that's like where we're at on the memory issue right now, but like, I think the hope here is like, let's just have a data-driven approach and see if we can make the numbers snap into a form we like, and let's have a talk around objective stuff and not less about subjective stuff, right? So, and that's actually kind of built into the ethos of Luro, where we're working on a new feature to where like we can track your components across your whole website, so that's a spoiler, but anyway, but we're working on that, but it's going to basically like when you're having conversations with your coworkers, you can basically have like really objective conversations like, hey, this component is used once, or hey, this component, is used 5,000 times, or the team that owns this set of these sets of pages or views, they haven't used the design system at all. What up with that? So anyway, that's kind of the hope there. So we're close. I could be a secret tour, Chris. So.
Yeah. I'll put that on the calendar one of these days because I'm going to do the same.
All right. We'll do it.
Productivity. Interesting. It's interesting to go analog at all. I would think that's slightly unusual for tech people just because there's so many computer-based solutions.
Yeah, like you use Things, don't you? Or
pretty big on Things still. It's not the absolutely only thing because Things is personal only. I don't know that they ever even tried to become a team tool, but of course Notion for the team stuff. Not of course, I don't know if it works for it, but it's just I've been used it so long that it just seems like the old hound these days or something.
Yeah.
And then, a little bit of Bear for more free form. Like I just need to write some stuff down. That's about it. But I do. Email is such a big part of my life and days that those end up being a little bit of a proxy to-do lists also. Mm-hmm. So it's a little spread out, but not in a ooh, this is such a mess kind of way. Like it's fine for me because you cannot just do one thing. I just can't. So having lots of things is useful, but not too many. I had a bad couple of productivity days because there was a little too much going on, and I kind of went over the waterfall or something.
Yeah.
And that there'd be like 5 things I was working on, and I was like, I can't seem to really push one of these forward.
Yeah. Personal question, has like CSS tricks, like offloading that, has that made it better? Like you're not managing a giant publication anymore.
I wish I could answer that. Doesn't it seem like it would? I think I've even written that amazing, but I'm like, at the same time, I just can't, I don't know for real. I can't answer you 100% honestly. How can it not though? My God, I had tons to do. I had a whole separate inbox. A team inbox, Usually I funnel everything pretty much to one, just because that's how I roll. But in this case, it was shared because we'd give multiple people access.